Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello everybody and welcome to Game Over Vancouver. Canucks defeat the Boston Bruins, a score of 2-0 in incredible fashion. What an exciting game that was. Exact proof that you do not need a high-scoring game of hockey for it to be an entertaining game of hockey, as that was just incredible. The final minute of the third period, I mean, just edge of your seat kind of hockey. All players getting involved, and honestly, that game really gave me hope as a Canucks fan because they should not have won that game, but they did. And good teams, good contending teams, will find ways to come away with wins in games where they are outplayed and outclassed, and that's exactly what happened tonight. I mean, Boston outshoots the Canucks by a ratio of over 2-1, and still Vancouver comes away with the win. Now, I mean, a huge part of that is incredible play from Canucks netminder Kevin Lankinen, who was just unbelievable tonight. I mean, save after save that was just truly incredible, as he continues to be a huge reason why the Canucks have had a fairly decent season so far, and a lot of people were rightfully concerned with the extended absence of Thatcher Demko, but with how good Kevin Lankinen is just night in, night out, especially on the road, it's hard to be as worried as you could be for the Vancouver Canucks, as if you've got someone like Lankinen, every little thing is going to be all right. So overall, yeah, 2-0. Of course, the second goal from Connor Garland coming as an empty net, so effectively a 1-0 game. Before I dive deep into it, I'll remind you that Game Over Vancouver is sponsored by Hyperdrive Hockey. Check out the flagship show of the Game Over Network on the Game Over Network channel. Hyperdrive Hockey, all things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries, whatever it is and wherever it is. Max, Daphne, and Kev have you covered for all your hockey news with a steady dose of fun engagement. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts on the Hyperdrive Hockey page at thegameovernetwork.com. Great to follow them, as of course covering all sorts of leagues, including being up to date with prospects. And it's nice. 5 years ago, that was all you had to talk about if you're a Canucks fan, is the up-and-coming prospects. Now we get to talk about having a good team here. Man, so tight, almost like a playoff game. Couldn't agree more, Kaja. I believe John Shorthouse actually said that on the broadcast, which on one hand is hilarious, but on the other hand is actually true. This really did feel like a playoff game tonight, in just how much both teams wanted it, and you could tell. Boston, under that new coach bump, really looked fantastic. They did a great job of stifling the Canucks offensively all night long until a power play. Now, I will say a controversial goal for the Canucks to win on, because that ends up being the game-deciding goal. You basically the only goal in the game aside from an empty netter. I said the second we saw it on the replay that was coming back, because we've seen goals like that come back before. And it does kind of harken back to the whole discussion of fans with the NHL, primarily with goaltender interference, but now with this of, can you be a little bit more transparent about what the ruling actually is? So the reason, in case anyone watching is not sure why it would have been called back, is the power play goal. It was shot from the blue line. It bounces off Connor Garland's glove before dropping at the feet of Jake DeBrusk, who taps it home on the back door to give the Canucks a 1-0 lead. However, we've seen that called a hand pass in the past. Now, of course, it wasn't a hand pass. It wasn't even remotely intentional. It happens to strike the stick right where the stick and glove meet before dropping down. I said immediately I thought it was coming back. Never been so happy to be wrong in my entire life, I'll say that. But I did think that one was going to come back. So it was an interesting ruling. And one where I did not actually have access to the Canucks broadcast. I was watching the Boston broadcast. And they were kind of upset that just the lack of transparency on that kind of ruling. And honestly, I felt for them. I mean, not that much, because I hate Boston, but I felt for them a little bit. If it was another team, I'd have felt a lot worse. Because I did kind of think that was a call that we've seen go different ways at different times. So say what you will about the goal. It counted. That's what matters. And Garland gets the assist. Him and DeBrusk connect on that goal, and I think that that's appropriate, since I thought that they were two of, if not our best players tonight, goaltender notwithstanding. Connor Garland continues to just be incredible for Vancouver. I think that people have made arguments for trading him because he's at the peak of his value, and I get that, but I just don't think you can. What he brings to this team right now is just incredible. He drives play every moment that he is on the ice, he is a conduit for the team to rally around and energize. And it's just, you can't lose that. You can't replace what he brings to the team. Even though you could bring in a player with potentially more skill, you're just not going to have the same ability to drive that he does. On top of that, I thought his chemistry with Dakota Joshua already pretty close to what it was last year. They had several chances early on, especially in the first period, where they very, very nearly connected. Jeremy Swayman had to make a couple good saves on that chance from Garland where he robbed him with a nice windmill glove save. Then there was another one where Garland dropped it from the corner to Dakota Joshua in front, and I just thought that having them already looking that chemistry as good as it is, despite Joshua missing significant time, was just awesome. Kaja with an interesting bit of trivia. Second ever shutout against Boston by a Canucks goaltender. I have to assume Luongo was the first, but that is pretty crazy. And yeah, Kevin Lankinen was just incredible. Over 30 saves in that shutout. I was mocked when I had said about 4 game overs ago that I think Kevin Lankinen has a chance to end up starting for Finland in this upcoming Four Nations Cup. He's just going to keep proving me right. He's just going to keep proving me right. I think he's always been a little bit underrated. If you look at his underlying numbers, not just with Vancouver, but with Nashville and even with Chicago before that, he has proven that he is a really high-quality backup goaltender, and you have to wonder after a season like this if it's going to be a similar situation to Smith, where the Canucks just can't afford him, and they'll really need Seelovs to take a step forward. But that's looking way too far into the future. Looking back to now, he was unbelievable tonight. I mean, I thought the Canucks did a really good job of stifling a lot of the high danger chances. I think a lot of those 30 shots were shots from the perimeter where Boston's looking to either drop a rebound into the crease or have a deflection past Kevin Lankinen, and the Canucks did a pretty good job of locking up their own slot tonight, which I have seen struggles with in the past, especially with certain pairings like Susie and Myers, but tonight, doing a pretty good job. I thought that most, not all, but most of those 30 shots were of kind of a lower quality chance. Corey Hirsch was the other goaltender to shut out the Boston Bruins. That is not I would have guessed. Yes, on the subsequent delay of game penalty slapped on the Bruins, Canucks would not score. So yeah, why don't we go into that whole play? So after the Canucks scored on the power play, the Boston Bruins challenged for a hand pass. There was a couple different things which the NHL was actually looking at. They were also looking to see if it was knocked down with a high stick prior to entering the net. With any other player, it would have been fine, but the fact it was Connor Garland made it pretty close because, of course, the ruling is if it gets knocked down directly into the net, it has to be below the crossbar, but if it's knocked down, it has to be below the shoulder. Connor Garland, of course, not so tall shoulders on that man, and so it was fairly close, but it was legal. And then they challenged for a hand pass. The challenge doesn't go through. As I said, fairly controversial, but it doesn't go through. Canucks get a power play. I thought the power play actually looked pretty abysmal tonight. I thought the one actual chance they had was the chance they scored on. I mean, all it takes is one. Obviously, you'd rather score on your only chance than not score on 10 good chances. But I didn't like what I saw from the power play tonight. I thought that they were kept to the perimeter a lot, and for the most part, their chances just not looking that good. Great to see Brock Besser back. Was really happy. I think it'll take him a couple games to find his stride. I didn't notice too much from him tonight, but I also didn't expect too much from him tonight. Coming back from an injury off that awful hit from Tanner Jeannot, so it was just really cool to see him back out there in a Canucks uniform and willing to get out there and battle for the boys. Battle of the goalies. That's fair enough. I didn't think that the Canucks tested Swayman very much. Honestly, that harkens back to the point I made right off the top of this podcast, is that I thought that the Canucks were just heavily outplayed tonight. Not a whole lot of rubber on Swayman. I mean, I believe, I'll double check, I guess 15 shots on goal, counting the empty net goal at the end, which is just, I mean, that's so few shots, but that's kind of been the Canucks' MO under Talkin. If you think about it, they were the second least shots per game team in the league last year, and they're well on pace to be in the bottom 5 again this year. Say what you will about PDOs, say what you will about your shots. If you're winning games, that's what matters. And it might end up being a little bit of a problem as time goes on. If the Canucks start to have a little bit of regression on the PDO, there could be issues, but PDO, it'll never regress. It will never regress. Not for Vancouver, at least. So yeah, after that goal, I mean, again, not a whole lot of scoring to talk about, but there was still plenty of chances. In the second frame of play, the Boston Bruins get an unreal chance at the start that is that ended up being the save of the game on the Bruins broadcast. That one where Pastrnak gets a partial break in on Lankin, and he makes a very awkward save, kind of draw almost like a half pad. He ended up in a half pad stack after making the save. It was very not necessarily by the book, but hey, if it's out, it's out. And then Eric Brandstrom, the franchise, God bless, stops the rebound, which would have gone in. So great to see that from Brandstrom, who people have said has defensive lapses, but we really have not seen said defensive lapses in the last 5 to 10 games from him. It was really only the first few games in his tenure as a Canuck. At this point, I am very biased, but I'm ready to see the Canucks offer Brandstrom a contract that keeps him around past the end of this year. Again, I'm definitely biased. I've loved Brandstrom for quite a while. I really thought he was going to be a big piece of Ottawa's future and going to be a big piece of Vancouver's future. That's even better, so fine by me. That was a great save by him. And then Connor Garland draws the penalty that ends up in the power play. That ends up in a goal. And I mean, Connor Garland, again, that just draws back to how amazing he is. And what, again, the intangibles that he brings to this team. Drawing penalties is not necessarily something that you see measured in too many different metrics, but just absolutely huge. And yeah, David, honestly, I think that's a great summarization of this game. David W. saying the Canucks scored a power play goal with the Bruins having dominated play. That game was so close. That said, a win's a win. It's on to the next game. No, completely fair enough. I think, you can sit here and say, oh, the Canucks were outplayed. Maybe shouldn't have come away with the win. There's so much to worry about. They got the win, and they hunkered down. And that's what I wanted to see is, okay, you know what? The offense wasn't there tonight for Vancouver. 15 shots, counting an empty netter. But they got one. And that was what happened for the Canucks, was they kind of realized, you know what? Some say the best form of defense is a good offense. Not for Vancouver. The best form of defense is going to be locking it down in front of their own net. And really, I thought all the defenders did a great job at, as I previously mentioned, shutting down a lot of the high danger chances and letting through low danger shots into Kevin Lankinen. I think when you realize that your goaltender is having a performance like Lankinen was having, you can sit back and let through those kinds of chances as long as you're blocking the rebounds stopping the rebounds and blocking the really high danger chances. Some lapses defensively. I thought that the Canucks allowed Boston to enter the zone fairly unchallenged on a lot of plays. Although, now that I say that, there was a delayed penalty about halfway through the third period where they pull Swayman for the extra attacker. And for a full minute and a half, Boston has the delayed penalty. They maintain possession, and they could not break in due to some great forechecking by Vancouver. And I think that is the identity Vancouver is trying to establish, is a really hard-working, forechecking team that might not set up a huge cycle and dazzle them offensively, but will create opportunistic chances and get goals off the rush. Now, that last bit does have to be proven over a test of time. Canucks were one of the worst teams in the league when it came to rush offense last year, and I believe statistically they're not that much better this year. However, it is picking up, and I think some of the offseason additions they have utilized a lot of skill off the rush. Jake DeBrusk being one. In Boston, he was one of the foremost proprietors of rush offense on that team, and that was where primarily his chances were coming from. I think Jake DeBrusk, boy, are the Bees missing him. Coming into this game, he would be third on their team in points and goals. Oh man, how much do they use that? And second in even strength points, I might add. So Jake DeBrusk, he had a little bit of a slow start in October for Vancouver, but has really, really found it. And I think that he has done a great job of also implementing his usage on the first line power play. I did mention I didn't think our power play was great tonight, but of course the one successful chance was Jake DeBrusk playing in that bumper position. And it's interesting because when I thought of Jake DeBrusk when the Canucks first signed him, that was one of the last things I thought, because he's not a huge, physical player. And when you're playing down in that bumper position right in front of the net, you have to be a player that's really good at standing your ground, because the defense is going to try to shove you around, keep you to the outside. But he does a great job of just staying in there. Some unreal hand-eye from Jake DeBrusk. We've seen some great deflections. Not this game, but the last one where he scored a power play goal was a crazy deflection from Connor Garland, where he uses just the absolute toe of his stick to get it up top corner. On Linus Ullmark, ex-Boston goaltender. And again tonight, just utilizing that position perfectly. So I'd be very surprised if we see DeBrusk get moved on the power play, even when we do get someone like JT Miller back. But it is tough, because once Brock Besser gets healthy again, that was his position. So, do you put Brock Besser back there and move Jake DeBrusk around, or do you now try to put Brock Besser somewhere else? I wouldn't mind seeing Brock Besser somewhere else. The only issue then becomes of where. You've got Pettersson playing on that right-hand side for the one-timer, so you don't really need another player like that. You could have Besser on the left side for the one-time and create 2 chances like that, but they utilize the left side of the ice for JT Miller playing up high for the wrist shot chance, and that used to work really well as well. So I am interested to see what the Canucks do on the man advantage. I think Jake DeBrusk is almost playing his way into making it a problem in that he's so good, it's now going to be difficult to take him off the power play and put Miller and Besser back to where they were. The Sens have loads of issues, and it may be that moving on from Brandstrom works for them. Yeah, I mean, honestly, we won't spend too much talk on the Sens, but man, every year I think it's going to be different for Ottawa. Every year I'm like, guys, this is the year. The Sens are going to be good this year. You know what I said coming into this year? I said, I guarantee the Sens will be fighting for a playoff spot when the season's almost at an end. Well, right now, 7th in the Atlantic. It's tough. It's tough. They've got a lot to figure out, not getting the goaltending that they wanted from Ullmark. And it's funny, both Ullmark and Swayman, best tandem in the league last year, and they both really struggled this year. Now, Swayman did play well tonight. That one goal, really nothing he could do about it. But if you look at his stats, he's not performed up to that big ticket that he signed for them. And neither has Linus Ullmark. So we'll see how they can turn it around. But goaltending, not a problem for Vancouver. However, we talk about players playing their way into almost being a problem of what to do with them. Kevin Lankinen, similar situation. Thatcher Demko is reportedly going to be back very soon. Now, who knows exactly how long very soon is, but people were saying he should be back in the month of November. It's the 26th, so that might not happen, but either way, he's going to be definitely before Christmas. And so when he comes back, how much do you continue to ride Kevin Lankinen? I do think you send Artur Shilovs down. I don't think that he has had a very good year in the NHL. I think you get him back in the AHL and continue trying to develop him. Nothing wrong with a goaltender not ready to jump up right away. That's all right. Back in the AHL, continue the development. No worries there. But then it becomes, who do you give the harder starts to right away? And I think you have to keep it on Kevin Lankinen. I think you bring Demko back in some easier matchups, try to play the best defensive hockey you can in front of him, limit the shots, and just see what he's kind of made of before you go back to running him against the hardest teams and expecting near Vezina level performance from him, which of course they got last year. Now, tomorrow, Pittsburgh Penguins. Will Demko be ready for that? I mean, by the sounds of it, probably not, but with how close he seems to be to returning, this would be a good game to get him back into. The Sabres have actually been performing decently, not great, but decently. Certainly a lot better than the Penguins. Or you could put him in against the struggling Red Wings. I would say it has to either be Pittsburgh or Detroit that I want to see Demko coming back in against, or the Blue Jackets on December 6th. I don't necessarily want to see him against the Sabres. I think they're quick. I think they do a great job of getting the puck laterally across. And that's what I think Demko's going to struggle with the most, is his horizontal movement. I say that, not a goaltender expert myself, nor a Popliteus expert, which is, of course, the injury he's coming from. So take my words with a grain of salt, but I don't necessarily want to see him against the Sabres. Minnesota Wild have been red hot. Now, Kaprizov is currently out, so that does suck for them, but I will see whether or not he goes in against them. I would like to see Demko coming in against an easier opponent like Pittsburgh, Detroit, or the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's what I think I want to see from him. So we'll see when he comes back in, but for now, Kevin Lankinen not giving them any concerns in between the crease, and that's just been awesome for them. I mean, Casey DeSmith ended up getting a 3-year contract with the Dallas Stars due to his amazing performance as a backup in Vancouver, and I'm interested to see if Kevin Lankinen can keep this up, whether or not he might end up getting a starting job somewhere else. Now, I don't think that's going to be in Vancouver, but, I mean, you don't want to see this, but if Demko came back and just looked awful, I mean, could Lankinen continue to perform at this level and end up being a starter in Vancouver? Super long shot, but I think if he keeps this up, he'll end up getting a starting look, because he was also amazing as a backup in Nashville last year. And he went to free agency because he thought he was going to be able to get a much better deal than he did. And I think it was just unfortunate for him that most of the other teams in the NHL chose to sign their backups very early. And it sounded like he was going to sign with Nashville for a while, then he didn't. And then by the time he officially declared himself a free agent on the market, pretty much no teams needed a backup, and that's why Vancouver was able to get him so cheap. They signed him at the start of training camp. Don't forget how late that Lankinen deal was. ends up being arguably the best signing of the offseason. Sens, yeah, struggling to move up to a wildcard spot, struggling to get out of the division spot on 3. It's just been tough for them, but yeah, no, we'll keep the topic on Vancouver. Boston's power play, I thought, looked pretty good, but at the same time, the Canucks penalty kill doing a really good job. It's an interesting formation the Canucks run on the penalty kill. Of course, your classic diamond, but they play very tight-knit. You'll notice that with some other teams, the players who are playing on the kind of middle points of the diamond, on the outside, will get pretty aggressive up against the boards. The Canucks don't do that. They stay pretty close into their formation, and they seem to be focusing much more on kind of blocking shots as opposed to trying to block passes. I just find that interesting because that's not something you see from too many teams in this league. And it's nice to see kind of different units. It makes it harder for other teams to adjust. If you're used to playing against certain penalty killing formations, having the Canucks with a slightly different one, or not even different formation, but just different style of penalty kill, does kind of throw a wrench into the works, as it were, against other teams' power plays. And I think that, yeah, they had some good chances on the power play. Lankinen came up huge on that first power play in the third. I did think Brock Besser's penalty that he took, that was the second one in the third period. Not a great penalty to take. But again, just coming back, I'm not gonna lay on Besser. He's just coming back from a big injury and doing his best in the game tonight. And yeah, the Canucks, that final 10 minutes just felt like they were hanging on. It felt like edge of a cliff, one finger hanging on for dear life, being bailed out at every turn. Boston just pouring it onto them. But that's what good teams do. That's what good teams can do, is find a way to batten down the hatches and survive the offensive onslaught that the Bruins threw at them. And I thought time after time, I'm like, oh, this is the play the dam's going to break. They're going to tie this up. It just feels inevitable with how hard to the net the Bruins were going every single shift. And I thought that tonight was a pretty good game for the Susie Myers line. I mean, they have gotten Susie Myers, which were split up, of course. Susie and Myers, it was Myers and Brandstrom, and then Susie playing alongside Juleson, and worked a lot better. So, we'll see. I mean, obviously the lines got shuffled around a little bit during that game, especially with how some of the line changes were happening when Boston was laying on the pressure. So there was times where Susie and Myers were out there together. There was times where they were split up. I thought Susie especially looked much, much better. I thought this was actually his best game of the season so far. And I mean, that's not necessarily saying a whole lot. He has had let's be honest, he's had a bad season this year. But tonight was the Carson Soucy that I'm used to seeing. The big, imposing defender that makes it really hard for forwards to get around him, get past him, and isn't afraid to block shots. And I thought there was a couple of times where Soucy made some really smart plays. Biggest one, I thought, was late in the third period. Boston Bruins controlling play, chance after chance after chance, and Soucy collides with Coyle near the side of the net and collapses into the net, knocking it off its moorings. That, I thought, was such an intelligent play. He did not have to crash into the net that hard. He absolutely did not. If you look at the check from Coyle, that's a weak check from Coyle. But what Carson Soucy realizes is it gives him a chance to knock the net off its moorings, get play blown dead, and stabilize the play for Vancouver. Just such a sneaky and intelligent play by Carson Soucy that I loved to see. And it, you can say what you will about it. It takes a little bit of sneaky, deceptive plays to win you games sometimes. And so I love seeing that from Carson Soucy. I thought just overall a pretty good game defensively for Vancouver. It was the offense that I thought was lacking a little bit. And we'll move on to period 2 here because I do want to start talking about some individual players in this game. Not that I thought anyone had a too bad of a performance, but I definitely do think that there was some that, of course, were much better than others. So we shall move on to the second frame of play. And, of course, period 2, sponsored by our crowdfunding efforts here. Game Over Network is an independent production focused on community inclusion and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over Network, we have crowdfunding options available. In the description of this episode down below, you'll find a link to our Patreon page. And we're also working on a page through LaRouche, a crowdfunding platform for companies originating in Quebec, similar to Kickstarter. For LaRouche, we're aiming to raise $15,000. If we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government grants that allow us to employ more people. Big government grants, mind you. Seriously, if we can hit that goal, it will kind of really change what Game Over Network's able to do in terms of content, and it's an awesome organization to work for. So it's amazing to support us in any way that you can, even if that's just a like or subscribe. But if you want to contribute financially as well, options for that down below. And we'll have giveaways as well from these crowdfunding efforts when we hit certain milestones. So if you have any ideas for that, put them in chat or join the Discord also down below and let us know there. Back to the game, and let's talk about some individuals. Garland and Joshua. I mentioned off the top, it looks like their chemistry is right back to what it was, and I think that I am correct. They just look amazing together. Dakota Joshua not missing a beat. What an absolute warrior. What inspiration. Battles cancer, wins, comes out the other side, doesn't even miss a step in his NHL career. Gets right back to it and continues to be the same frustrating player to play against. Physical, difficult to knock off the puck, great awareness, and the chemistry with Garland is there all the time. They seem to know where each other are basically all the time, and it's just amazing to have chemistry like that. And they both drive the line. And having two people that are able to really drive play single-handedly on the same line just makes it so creative. You can send either one into a board battle and be very confident that even if they don't outright win it, they're not going to let the player get away from that board battle. They're going to be either forced to make a pass or forced to trap it up along the boards and wait for help. And having that double threat on one line is just awesome. And you see why Rick Tocchet likes these duos, these combinations of players on his lineup, because it feels like those two have chemistry that they don't necessarily have with anyone else on the team. But what that does mean is you can put them with basically anyone, whoever it is down the middle, whether you want to put them with Pettersson, Suter, Miller when he's back, Bluger, anyone really, and it feels like they'll still be able to provide exactly what they've been providing for Vancouver all season long. Now tonight, of course, with Pius Suter, and Pius Suter, quietly pretty good game, and you see the trust that Rick Tocchet has in him, and I think that was another underrated signing of last year was Pius Suter. He's a very versatile player, kind of like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, a bit more skill just overall than Pius Suter, but they're very similar archetypes of players where they're just so versatile. Natural-born centers who are very, very capable of playing the wing, and who are very talented defensively as well. And I think it really says something that with 34 seconds left, the net empty for Boston Bruins, and a face-off that is going to decide the game, Tocchet puts Suter in there. Not anyone else, notably not Pettersson, but Pius Suter, because he was confident that not only will he do a decent job on the face-off, he's going to be defensively responsible afterwards. And sure enough, it's Suter that ends up getting the shot block, the pass over to Garland for the empty net, and the win, thus proving completely the right decision. And so that shows what Pius Suter brings to this team at such a cheap cap hit as well. So Pius Suter, A+ rating for me on that game, even though a little bit of a quiet performance. I think outside of the last minute, you wouldn't have necessarily pointed to any highlights for him that stood above and beyond everyone else. Just a quiet, solid performance that you need from him. Now, I should probably stop watching games if we want Pettersson to perform, because I'll say in the games that I have been able to watch, I haven't been super impressed with Pettersson. Now, I know he is being great over the last stretch. You look at the stats, they tell you that. I haven't been able to watch most of the games over the last stretch, and so maybe I should tune out and Pettersson will keep chugging along. But tonight, not a bad performance by any means. It's not like we saw anything, bad from him, but definitely not a whole lot from him either. I thought that he wasn't the best player on his own line. DeBrusk was. And just overall, a forgettable, which isn't bad, forgettable is fine, performance from PD, and I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts in the chat. Of course, I know not everyone's going to agree with me with those kind of things, but I just thought kind of invisible out there. Kiefer Sherwood was getting under Swayman's skin a bit. Kiefer Sherwood was getting under everyone's skin. He is such an amazing kind of player, and I mean, that is exactly why the Canucks got him, was because they had to play a series against him in the Nashville series in round 1 last year. And when they played against him, they thought, wow, I never want to play against this player again. What's the only way we can guarantee we'll never play against him? Bring him home, baby. Bring him home. And that's exactly what the Canucks did. I will say, I think that Kiefer Sherwood has unlocked a new offensive level to his game here in Vancouver that people didn't expect from him, and that's a super pleasant surprise. But even without that upside offensively, the things that he brings to the bottom 6 are incredible. I mean, obviously leading the league in hits. He finishes hits every single game, but it's the heart and soul. You can tell he treats every game like a playoff game. And it's also the instigation, I'm going to say that's a word, that he can pull off No, that is a word. That absolutely is a word. I don't know why I'm tripping. Instigation that he can pull off in front of nets, in the boards, everywhere. It's all night long. He is just getting under people's skins. It's not just Jeremy Swayman. At the end of the game, you saw, well, it's about 6 minutes left in the third. You saw him nearly goad Nikita Zadorov into a fight. Those two barking at each other all the way to the bench. The ex-Canucks Zadorov, who kind of had the antagonizer role last year for Vancouver in the playoffs, now been replaced in that role by Sherwood. And yeah, the ability of Sherwood to get under team skins is just incredible, and he's just going to be the best player in the playoffs. I'm so excited. I mean, definitely shouldn't assume the Canucks are going to make the playoffs right now, just sitting in that wild card position. But assuming the season continues to go well for Vancouver and we can make the playoffs, Kiefer Sherwood is going to be amazing. He's going to be my most exciting player to watch in the playoffs. Yes, over Miller, Pettersson, and Hughes. I want to see Kiefer Sherwood. That's who I want to see. And yeah, Pettersson has been inconsistent, particularly since signing that contract. He has been inconsistent, but again, he has had some very, very good performances over the last few games, so I'm not going to rag on him too much, because again, I didn't think he played poorly tonight. I'll be honest, I didn't even notice him. That's just how it was for me tonight, and part of that is a good thing. Obviously, if a player is playing bad, giving away the puck, making turnovers, being out of position, then you will notice him. So, being invisible could be worse, but yeah, not a whole lot from him tonight. And he was, of course, part of the power play that I thought was pretty bad tonight. Again, the only real chance the Canucks had on the power play, they converted on. So, good. Yes, great for them. And yeah, Garland and DeBrusk looked great on that. Looking down further on, Canucks now up to 8 wins in a row on the road. And I'll pitch another question to you, chat. What is going on with the Canucks on the road as opposed to home? What's happening? I mean, when they're at home, it feels like a completely different team. Canucks now on an 8-win streak on the road, and it feels like an amazing team that's really well put together. On home ice, everything seems to fall apart and they look flat. Now, good news, guys. We're on a road trip. We've got some more games away to be able to pick it up and to keep rolling. But I do want to see what happens as the season progresses, to see if that record kind of balances itself out a bit. Because right now, I mean, it almost feels like the Canucks don't want home ice advantage. And maybe that's their huge, huge big brain plan. Become way better on the road than home ice, barely sneak into the playoffs so the other team has home ice advantage every series, and you can win every series 4-3. Maybe that's a super big brain strategy. I think there's something else, and they're just trying to figure things out on home ice. But they come to Vancouver, and remember they live in Vancouver. Yeah, maybe it is something to do with pressure. I mean, especially after the expectations set last year. I do think that there is a lot of pressure to perform on home ice, but it doesn't explain why there's this level of differential between home and away. Because away, the Canucks look like a serious Stanley Cup contender, and on home ice, it's like, ooh, who's going first overall? Do we think? So I mean, we'll see. What's up, Zachary McNally? Welcome to the stream. And yeah, pressure's definitely a part of it, but yeah. And David, again, dropping some amazing stats in the chat. Thank you very much, David W. Bluger saying that, or David saying Bluger won 6 of 11 faceoffs. Elias Pettersson went 8 for 21, Ratu 7 for 16, and Suter 2 for 10, won under half the faceoffs. And that does show you a very interesting kind of thing about Suter being on the ice for the final 30 seconds. He went 2 for 10 on the draw tonight. So when Rick Tocchet put him out for the final faceoff, it shows that he is not concerned with winning the faceoff, despite there being 30 seconds left. He's concerned with shutting down play afterwards, and he knows that's what Pius Suter is going to do. And that does also kind of show the eye test doesn't necessarily prove everything, because I really couldn't. If you had asked me how I thought Suter did in the faceoffs tonight, I'd have said decent, fine. Didn't really notice. 2 for 10, 20%, not great. Ratu 7 for 16. I mean, definitely not terrible from your fourth line. Given that is his biggest strength as a player, you want to see those numbers get up, but they are slowly climbing. You think back to his first couple games in the NHL, his face-off percentages sitting at around 30%. Now that's one face-off win below 50. Bluger continuing to be the epitome of consistency. Pettersson 8 for 21. That's not great. I'm going to be honest. From your $11.6 million center, who's supposed to be one of the best centers in the whole league, 8 for 21 is not great. You at least want to see them taking 50%. Almost makes you wonder if well, I mean, not that I suggest to send anyone down to the AHL, but I just wondered if they can get some training in with Manny Malhotra. Malhotra has revamped Ratu's face-off game. Last year, literally just 1 year ago, people were saying that Aatu Ratu was going to have to make a change to winger if he ever wanted a chance in the NHL. Working with Manny Malhotra, he has now developed a face-off taking technique where he can take it by flipping the blade on either side as his strong side. And he's really turned faceoffs into a strong part of his game, despite, again, 1 year ago, him being labeled unable to play center. Now, part of that is also the defensive side of the game, because, of course, centers have to be a bit more responsible, but the faceoff was a big thing of it, too, so it was nice to see how much that's improved, and I wonder if Pettersson, just a couple hours of Manny Malhotra, we'll see if that solves things. Perhaps I'm just being a little ambitious. Luck in the crease, saying Lankinen's got to make room on his shelf for the Vezina and Hart trophies. You know what's hilarious? It's not going to show. I don't think it'll show. We'll see if I can get it to show. Lankinen Vezina. That's my second last note. Lankinen Vezina. I agree. Let's start the conversation, Lachlan. You said I was crazy for saying he's going to be over UC Saros for the Four Nations Cup. Not only is he going to be ahead of UC Saros for the Four Nations Cup, he's going to be Hellbuck for the Vezina. I'm definitely not just talking out my you-know-what right now. Jokes aside, he has been amazing. And he's been so consistent, too. I mean, Lankinen, he's had, maybe one bad game, and even then that game wasn't that bad. He's just been unreal for Vancouver. Tonight, a 30-save shutout performance, maybe 31, where he just is lights out for them all night long. And I think it has just been amazing, because Thatcher Demko has clearly needed a lot more time than anticipated for Vancouver. And could you imagine if Lankinen came in and performed like Artur Shilov's had, how screwed the Canucks would be? I was trying to think of a better word than screwed, but that's exactly what that'd be. Right now, if they were getting goaltending, and that's not to rag on Artur Shilov's, I mean, a super young goaltender not having a great start of the season, that's fine. Third on the depth chart, whatever, that's A-okay. But if Lankinen had been performing the same kind of thing, I think that the Canucks would be on some really hot water right now. And then Demko not only would be rushed back, I guarantee if Lankinen's not performing well, he's already back in the cage tonight. But Lankinen playing well allows Demko to really recover, get fully as good as he can possibly be before coming back. But seriously, I mean, like, is there an outside world where Lankinen could have a Vezina argument if Demko comes back and they really give him load management and Lankinen and Demko split the starts from here on out and Lankinen keeps playing as well as he's been playing? Is there a conversation there? Probably not, especially given how amazing Connor Hellebuyck has been, when he looks like he's going to go back-to-back. But seriously, Kevin Lankinen, I mean, hats off. And I was being serious 4 game overs ago when I said I think there's a chance Lankinen could fight Saros for that starting spot in the Four Nations Cup. It was called a ridiculous theory then, and as we advance closer and closer to the time, it's looking less and less ridiculous as Kevin Lankinen continues to put on unbelievable performances with consistency, and that's the number one thing. It's the consistency that he shows that I think is the big reason. Jennings, yeah, that's a great shout by our fellow host Kaja May. Of course, for those of you that don't know, the William Jennings, the let's be real, the less prestigious goaltending award. The Vezina is for the outright best goaltender. The Jennings is for the goaltending tandem that finishes with the lowest goals against average. So we'll see if it is. We'll see. I didn't just make that up, right? Is Jennings just goals against average, or is it save percentage as well? I'm gonna look that up before I lie to my entire audience. With the fewest goals scored against it. Okay, I was right. It's not goals against average, it's total goals, but close enough. I didn't fully lie to you guys. I'll let myself off. Yeah, good chance for the Jennings. If Demko can come back and play really well. So, the Finnish adult men's team will have a tough choice for the upcoming Four Nations Cup of the Crease with Lankinen, UC Saros, and Jonas Korpisalo. I mean, man, Korpisalo. Is it just Ottawa? Is it Ottawa, guys? Is Ottawa just gonna have bad goaltending forever? Jonas Korpisalo, probably the worst starter in the entire league last year, at least by my mind. Gets traded to Boston. Looks like a very, very solid goaltender in between the pipes for Boston. Meanwhile, Linus Ullmark, 2 years removed from Vezina, goes back to Ottawa and looks bad. Is it Ottawa? What's up, guys? I don't want Ottawa to have bad goaltending anymore. Can this finally end? Ullmark was supposed to be the end, the fix to this. And it's not. Maybe they should have gotten Kevin Lankinen instead of getting Linus Ullmark. Why make a big trade? You could just sign Lankinen for barely over league min and get crazy good goaltending. But yeah, so that's that's been tough. I don't think Korpisalo is going to have a chance for the starting gig for the Four Nations Cup. I'd just be shocked. I do think they'll go with Saros. I think it'll be Saros, Lankin, and Korpisalo. But who knows? I mean, Saros hasn't been playing that bad, but Nashville has. And of course, when you're on a team that is playing bad, you don't look as good. So, we'll see what they end up doing with that. But of course, rosters for that tournament have to be finalized very, very soon. In fact, in 1 week's time, or less than a week's time. It's in 6 days' time. December 2nd is when the rosters must be finalized for the Four Nations Cup. And poll for you guys, are you guys excited about the Four Nations Cup? I haven't heard that much hype about it. It's the first best on best hockey we have gotten to see since 2014. Was it 2014? I think it was 2014. So I'm very, very excited for it personally. I do think that it is dumb we aren't seeing Russia. Now, I get it, the sanctions and stuff like that, but let the players play. It's not the players' fault what's going on over in Europe right now. I would love to see. I don't think you can truly have best on best hockey without Russia. I think Russia would be the third best team behind the United States, then Canada, then Russia in my mind. For me, the rank probably goes on paper. I think the States are the best team, followed by the Canadians. Then I'd put Russia. Then I'd put Sweden. And then I'd put Finland. Although, with this level of skill on these teams, any team could win it. And especially with such a short tournament, any team could come away with this win. Finland could take down the States, and anyone could come away with that win. But I am very excited to see this tournament. It's been so long since best on best hockey. I am more excited for the Olympics, obviously, the year after. But this is a great little treat for us hockey fans to get to see the best on best and what it looks like. But man, that United States team, they are scary on paper. They are so scary. The one question mark I would have for them is, I was going to say is goaltending, because for a moment I forgot about Connor Hellebuck. I was going to say Ottinger and Swayman have both been inconsistent between the pipes this year for their respective teams, but Hellebuck hasn't. So scratch that, they'll be just fine. The United States are unbelievable top to bottom. Canada is too, but they do have question marks in between the pipes. Well, I have no idea who's going to start for them. Really, it could change the day before the tournament starts. So we'll see. Canada is cooked. Kaja, not optimistic, are we? The only reason I'm going to say Canada isn't cooked is because I do think that any team with Connor McDavid on it has a bit of an X factor. He is the best player, and McKinnon too. I think the best players in the world are going to be on the Canadian team, and so because of that, I think there's a chance. But definitely the United States is deeper. I don't think there's any chance, any debate about that, especially defensively. And goaltending is just the biggest thing that anyone is going to point to. The forwards, Canada probably a slight edge. The defense, I'd say the States a slight edge. Fairly a wash between those two. But goaltending is where it's really just a big difference for the States. And yeah, David W. with an interesting point that Germany, Czechia, and Slovakia weren't invited despite plenty of representation on NHL teams from each country. And if you wanted to keep it even, this is where you would include Russia. Four Nations Cup, let's make it 8 nations. Add Russia, Germany, Czechia, and Slovakia. And now, I will say, I don't think any of Germany, Czechia, and Slovakia have as good rosters, but it would at least be competitive. And I think there's a chance they could steal a win here or there, but I definitely don't think we'd see any of those teams really coming away with any wins. But it would be competitive enough. And I'd just like to see more representation. But it's Russia that I feel for, because I think Russia would have a really interesting team. And I think they'd have a certain young superstar in Matvei Michkov coming through to make that team. Whether I don't think Bedard or Celebrini are going to make the Four Nations Cup, I do think if Russia was invited, Michkov would. So it'd be nice to see some young. McDavid has no cups. Good point. He's a fraud. It is true that we haven't seen him get back to that 160-point season, which is a shame. I'd love to. As much as I obviously do not like the Edmonton Oilers, man, was that a fun year. 160 points from Connor McDavid. He was incredible. It's just end-to-end highlights, and he still is just an unbelievable player to watch. So it's a treat to get to watch the best players in the world. Back to Vancouver now. I'm going to move us on to the third frame of play, because I do want to look a bit to the future and around the league a bit before we wrap this one up. And of course, if you guys have any questions in the chat, please do feel free to drop them down below, and I will get back to them. Moving on to the third here, of course, the Third, sponsored by our wonderful merch that we have here in Game Over Vancouver. If I can get the slideshow, there we go. You can scan the QR code at the bottom right-hand side of your screen to get some wonderful merch, whether you like hoodies, whether you like t-shirts, whether you just want a mug to drink your tea out of. This is the first Game Over show I've done without a mug of tea by my desk here. I was rushed to start right after. Usually it would be right out of my Game Over mug. Hoodies, of course, we're getting to winter. I know you want to stay warm and you want to look good while doing it, so please consider getting some Game Over merch. It's a great way to support us while also looking great. And I can confirm, having now seen some of the merch in person, very comfortable as well. KC Wren putting it in the chat. Shirts are really comfortable and still get delivered despite the Canada Post strike. That's what we do here at Game Over Vancouver. The Post strike might not be over, but we are, and we'll deliver you merch. So please do consider getting some merch. It's a great way to support us. And thank you to Karen Krobach, friend of the show and guest in past shows and guest in future shows as well, for getting a shirt because it allowed me to see what it's actually like in person, as I still don't have one yet myself, and I am going to change that. Although I think I myself am going to go for a hoodie. I'm more of a hoodie guy. Love my hoodies. But back to hockey talk here. Going to the future here for Vancouver. Not difficult games coming up, if we're going to be honest. The Pittsburgh Penguins, oh man, I want them to be good. I've said it every time I mention the Penguins on this show. I love Crosby. I love Karlsson even more as a Senators fan. They suck. They suck. They suck so badly. There's no hope for Pittsburgh. I'm sorry to be doom and gloom, but really, there's nothing redeeming about this team. Their offense is bad. Their defense is bad. Their goaltending is And I mean, that's a goaltender right there that if he could somehow pull an unbelievable performance out of nowhere, could end up being the starter for Canada. Tristan Jarry. He's been good in the past, but not now. And they're so tied down with aging veterans that aren't going to leave. I mean, it really depends. Pittsburgh have to make a decision here whether or not you want to just lay back on your legacy or try to get a rebuild and be competitive right away. If you're trying to get a rebuild going and be a super good team in the future, you've got to start moving. You've got to start moving some of the guys you don't want to move. Letang, Malkin, Karlsson, and the big one, Sidney Crosby. Now, would Crosby get traded? That is the question. What do you guys think? I don't think he's going to get traded. Despite the fact it would objectively be the best move for Pittsburgh to trade him, you'd still get a boat. You'd get the key to the city of whichever team traded for him in return for Crosby. I know he's old now. He is still one of the best players in the league. He still does Crosby things. He's got that leadership. He's got that veteran experience. You know what he can do in the playoffs. And it's just whether or not they kind of respect the legacy and allow all three guys of Letang, Malkin, and Crosby to retire as Penguins, or whether they try to move them on. Now, I mean, I don't actually know what you'd get for Letang and Malkin. They haven't been great this year. Still a great reputation, and at their peaks can be great players, but it's interesting to see what Pittsburgh is going to do. That game tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Will be hosted by Mark Sianquita, so please do tune in for that one. I'm expecting a good game for Vancouver. Again, Penguins, just so much struggles for them. I really don't want to see Vancouver struggling against this Pittsburgh Penguins team. This should be a game they walk into and walk out of as well. Then it's the Sabres. Some really early games coming on up on the docket here, guys. I mean, tomorrow 4:30, okay, that's fine. Then it's noon on the Sabres, and I will have that one. And I believe, I'll double check the schedule, but I believe it's going to be Joseph Augusti guesting with me on that. It certainly shall. Writer for SFU Hockey and color commentator for the PJHL, so that'll be a very fun show broadcasting alongside him, and that's going to be against the Buffalo Sabres at noon. And then, the first time this year, I'm going to have to set an alarm for a game, 9:30 in the morning. What are we doing? 9:30 against the Detroit Red Wings. That one's going to be in Detroit. What's the time difference for Detroit? 2 hours? 3? So that's midday or 11:30 for them. It just feels like a weird time for a hockey game. I guess it's a Sunday, but 9:30 in the morning. I mean, you're going to have a Game Over show starting at noon. That's crazy. But anyways, the Red Wings, that's another team that have been struggling. And I'm fine with it. Growing up, I really liked the Red Wings because I loved Zadorov and I loved Pavel Datsyuk. Now, given my Sens allegiances, don't love the Red Wings. And it's fun to see how much they are struggling. That has been one of the worst rebuilds in hockey in my mind. Because not only, like at least with some of the other rebuilds, the Sabres, the Senators, there's some young pieces that are really good, like Stutzla, Sanderson for the Sens. For the Sabres, obviously you got Tage Thompson, Zach Benson. You got some other guys, like their defense core is great, Darlene. What do the Red Wings have? You have Moritz Seider, who had an unbelievable rookie year and has not taken one step forward since, not a step backwards either. And I think he is a legitimate top pairing guy, but he's not looking like a superstar defenseman, which he was supposed to be. And then you have a bunch of pretty good guys in Raymond and Lucas Raymond and the other guys. Dylan Larkin, don't know why I forgot his name for a moment. But that rebuild's just not going well. Their defense core is pitiful. It is pitiful. What is Steve Yzerman doing? I mean, I know he's been given he's been given a huge leash for two reasons. One, when he rebuilt the Tampa Bay Lightning, he was the one that built that team that went back-to-back cups. That is going to get you a lot of respect as a GM. When you build a team that doesn't just win a Stanley Cup, that alone will get you respect. But wins 2 in 2 years and has been a significantly threatening contender ever since, too. And of course, the other reason being, he is Steve Yzerman in Detroit. Need I say more? At this point, though, how much longer can the experiment last? They don't really have any super up and coming stars because they keep finishing middle of the pack in the league every year. So they keep getting middle of the pack first round picks. I mean, Axel Sandin Pellikka looks like he'll be a pretty decent defensive prospect, but he's not going to be a superstar. And that's what they need. They need an infusion of youth. I mean, you imagine, not that they were anywhere close, but you imagine they get someone like Celebrini. Boom, immediately competitive. But no, they refuse to kind of tank. They're stuck in limbo land, much like the Senators. It's funny how much those two teams mirror each other despite being bitter rivals. But the Yzer plan appears to very much be running on fumes. Yes, it does. I completely agree. Okay, Detroit is 3 hours ahead, so it's 12:30. Oh, Thanksgiving weekend. That's what it is. See, I don't know American holidays, as I am not one. I know that they have Thanksgiving really late in the year. Thanksgiving is in December for them? It's December 1st? I didn't know that. For some reason I thought it was in November for them, but it shows how much I know. I know nothing about anything, let alone American holidays. Or hockey, for that matter. No, I'm just kidding. Looking back to the schedule after that, it will be, I won't go in depth for every team, it will be then the Wild, Blue Jackets, and Lightning. Wild will be interesting. We'll see if Kaprizov's back by then. Kaprizov has kind of single-handedly elevated the Wild to major threatened status this year in the Central, but without him, nowhere near as threatening. And then the Blue Jackets, who of course are the Blue Jackets. They've endured so much, wishing the best for them as a franchise, but just not a super great team this year. So looking forward, some really, really winnable games for Vancouver is what I'm saying by that. And the next 4 are still on the road. And with how good the Canucks have been playing on the road, road trips kind of feel like keep them going. Why not? Keep them going. Let's not go back home. Let's play 82 away games this year. We seem to be better at it, but I'd like to see them figuring things out on home ice. So for the Canucks, some other, not really news, but just speculation. JT Miller's still out. We don't have an exact timetable for him, but if the Canucks can keep winning games without Miller, boy, is that a success, because when he comes back, that's going to be a huge infusion of skill and leadership to the lineup. Brock Besser just came back, and I do expect him to continue to kind of elevate his game. Didn't necessarily play great tonight, but it's your first game coming back from a pretty major injury, and now he will absolutely find his game. No one has any questions about Brock Besser's abilities, but it'll take him a couple games to find his stride, just like it did with Dakota Joshua, and now think about how great he was tonight. So really not too worried for that. Other than that, not really a whole lot of moves needing to be made. I think that the fourth line, the bottom 6 looking just pretty good for Vancouver, and when your bottom 6 is looking pretty good, don't really need to change it, because the bottom 6 is just, if you can have your bottom 6 going even, then you're pretty happy. I mean, it does put a little bit of pressure on your top 6, but the Canucks bottom 6 hasn't been a problem at all at any point this year, so I'm just going to follow the motto here of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the Canucks bottom 6 certainly ain't broke. I don't think needs any fixing. Blue Jackets haven't had much playoff success during their history, and their history has been since, basically 2000. They came into the league along with the Nashville Predators, who, of course, have had a lot more success than the Blue Jackets, although, neither has a cup to show for it, although Nashville certainly came a lot closer. But the Blue Jackets are just a franchise where I just have pity for them, man. I just have pity for the Blue Jackets. I mean, like, they've had so many stars leave them. They've had so much tragedy in their franchise. I wish the best for the Blue Jackets. I really do, but not when they're playing against the Vancouver Canucks. So that'll be an interesting game. Yeah, Canucks and Sabres news starting Friday. That'll be the next time I'm back with you. Once again, that'll be alongside Joseph Augusti. Very excited for that game. Yeah, so that'll be a fun one. Next game, of course, against the Penguins, hosted by Mark Sianquita. I kind of feel like I've covered everything I need to cover. Wrapping it up, Kevin Lankinen with another stupendous performance. Is that the best contract in the entire NHL? There's certainly a chance. There's certainly an argument to be made. Obviously, you could point at some other ones up and down the lineup. I mean, even Jack Hughes is another fantastic contract. Quinn Hughes even better though. So, who knows which way you want to go with things. But Lankinen, best bang for your buck. He was unreal. Canucks hung on to a game where I didn't really feel like they necessarily deserved the win. Really little offense all game long for Vancouver. But again, good teams find ways to win games where they shouldn't. And that's what Vancouver did tonight. And that was a great sign for the Canucks because I think that some of their other games, they were handily outplayed and handily beaten. Think about the Islanders. Think about the Devils when they lost 6-0. Tonight, they were handily outplayed and they won anyways. And that was a great sign for Vancouver because if you can pull wins out of nowhere like that against, I was going to say good teams, Boston's really starting to fall off. If you can find ways to get wins when you shouldn't, that is the mark of a good team. So, NHL have never really cared what Canucks fans. Early games don't matter for them. Yeah, that's true. To be fair, I won't hark on the NHL too much for, specifically the Canucks. I think that's just a West Coast thing in general. The NHL really does base it around the East Coast. And I mean, I can kind of respect that because if you think about it, like a 7 p.m. start there is 4 p.m. here. That's fine for us. But a 7 p.m. start here is 10 p.m. for them. That means you're staying up till 1 a.m. to watch a hockey game. So I'll let the NHL slide with this one. I'll let them slide for 4:30 p.m. starts. 9:30 in the morning, no thank you. I will pass. I'm good. So I'll start to wrap it up here. We'll move on to period 4, where if you guys have any questions, this is your final chance to ask me them before I take off for the evening. We'll move on to period 4 here for my wrap up. Yeah, once again, next game against the struggling Pittsburgh Penguins. Excited to see that. I don't think the Canucks really need to do too much line shifting. We're not expecting to get JT Miller back for next game. So I say keep it as it was. Yeah, there wasn't too much offense, but bear in mind, this is the Boston Bruins, which is a similarly structured team, which does pride itself on being defense first. Aside from that, they were also a team that gets that new coach bump. Who knows why that's a thing? I really don't understand why it works. Hey, we fired one of the best coaches in the entire NHL. So good that he's hired by another team 5 days later. And now our team's better for some reason. So, I don't know why it works, but it does. And so, I think that I'm not going to put too much stock into the Canucks kind of being outplayed tonight. They got the win. That's what matters. Let's move on. See how they do against Pittsburgh. Demko tomorrow. Oh, it's a tough one. If he is ready, I would like to say yes. I think this is going to be the best game for Demko to come back in. The Penguins are not just a struggling team. They are slow. And that's going to be a great chance for Demko to get back in because the last thing you want a recently injured goaltender to have to do is move around a whole lot. The Penguins, they're not a team that does that a whole lot. They're not a team that's really good at getting the puck through the seam, cross ice really quickly. And so it's going to be a team that is a little bit easier for a goaltender coming off injury to play against. So I would love to see Demko tomorrow, but I doubt it. I just don't know if he's quite back yet. I think they might save him for a team like the Red Wings. Sunday game, away game against another struggling team. That's my hunch. But as I said, on paper, this is the best game in my mind to get Demko back in. So I think if he's ready, you put him back. But I also think with how well the Canucks have been playing in front of their netminders and how well their netminders have been playing, there's nothing wrong with waiting till the 1st of December, putting him against Detroit, give him one last week if you don't feel like he's ready tomorrow. But I'd love to see him back tomorrow. I really do. I think that it would be great to see him come back. Obviously, all the Canucks fans want to see their Vezina caliber goaltender come back, and we want to see him come back at peak form. So for me, I'm much more worried about making sure he's fully recovered before he comes back. But if you're going to bring Demko back soon, why not tomorrow against a struggling team in the Pittsburgh Penguins, who I think are still dead last. Is Shelove's on the trip? Yep. Shelove's backed up last night, so if it's not Demko tomorrow, I'm very much expecting it will be Shelove's tomorrow. And I think that Obviously, Artur Shilovs has had major struggles this year. So if there's a game you're going to bounce back on, let it be against the Pittsburgh Penguins, which I believe are dead last in the league right now. Let me just double check that before I lie to you guys. 18 points. No, the Montreal Canadiens and the Chicago Blackhawks and Predators. There's a few teams below them now, but they are only one win ahead of those teams. They are 7, 12, and 4. So I mean, 7 and 16 effectively in terms of wins and losses outright, and that's not what you want to see. On top of that, minus 34 goal differential for the Penguins, which is by far the worst in the league. The second worst is minus 22. So yeah, they're a really struggling team, and I think that this is a chance for Shilovs to bounce back or Demko to bounce back. Whatever I'm saying is that whichever goaltender comes in, you want to have a bounce back performance. So just not Lankinen. Don't put Lankinen in. You don't need it. Put in Shilovs. Put in Demko. One of the two. Penguins are old and slow. Couldn't agree more, Scott. I think they are exactly that. They are old. They are slow. Oldest team in the league is the Edmonton Oilers. Second, Pittsburgh Penguins. And so, yeah, I don't think that they are going to be too troubling to the netminders. Not to say that they can't score goals. Obviously, you don't get 7 wins without scoring goals. But I don't think that they have had anything too threatening for goaltenders to watch out for. Thus, either you put Shilovs in, who, again, major struggles this year. I saw that of all goaltenders, this counts backups, this counts every goaltender that's played a game. He is 5th last in the league in terms of goals saved above expected. And that's out of a pool of like 80 goaltenders. So that's not great. On top of that, I'll double check his stats right now. But I believe he's got a sub 900 save percentage on the year right now. Yeah, I mean, right now, 857 save percentage, which is, and he's only got 1 win in 6 games played. I mean, there's no getting around it. That is absolutely abysmal. But this is where you can come in and have a change of pace. As a goaltender, sometimes you need a game to turn around and get your confidence back. Goaltending, as any goaltender will tell you, it is entirely a mental position. So, yeah, you lose your footing a little bit. You fall, not literally, but just in terms of your skill in games and consistency. Yeah, you might fall a few games in a row, and that's all right. You can get it back, and I think the Penguins are going to be a team that is good for getting that confidence back. So I think they'll start Shilovs. If it's not Shilovs, then it will be the return of the King, Thatcher Demko, coming back. So we'll see. Obviously, just wait for those updates. Great guys to follow: Rick Dhaliwal, Satyar Shah from Sportsnet 650. I'm sure one of them will break the news that Demko is or isn't back. Or Thomas Trans, any one of the insiders will have it long before we do here at Game Over. So I think that I'm good to go. If anyone has any more last minute questions, I'll get them answered here. But other than that, once again, thank you guys so much for joining me. If you are new here, please do consider liking and subscribing. It really does help us out. It's free. It takes half a second. And yeah, it really helps us out in terms of boosting our videos, having us get more views, more exposure as we continue to just try to grow homegrown media content here. And of course, yeah, there's the media giants, and then there's just the little guys that do their best. And that's who we are, and we have a great time here with Game Over. It's an awesome community that we've built here, and if you want to be even more a part of the community, please consider joining the Discord server down below. We're always talking about the game while it's going on in the Vancouver chat. You can catch Kaja dropping some excellent jokes in the Vancouver chat, or me usually typing in all caps lock about a defensive error. And Mark Sianquita chiming in as well. So, yeah, please feel free to join us on the Discord or yeah, subscribe, join us on the show. Thank you guys all for the support. Really do appreciate it. For now, I shall bid you guys adieu. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight, and join Mark Sianquita tomorrow after the Pittsburgh Penguins game. Puck drop on that game, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. The Game Over show will be starting at roughly 7 p.m. PST, 6:45, depends how long the game takes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and have a great night.